This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning. You're listening to Money Matters. I'm Chris Hensley. We have a great show lined up for you today. We have Josh Thomas, who is a accomplished business consultant, coach, and founder of Factor One. Um, First of all, Josh, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, excited to be here, man. Money does matter.
It certainly does. Now, and I can uniquely say that you're actually here in Texas because we've been interviewing. I've interviewed somebody in Canada yesterday. We've been kind of getting people from all over the place recently, but you're up in Austin, right?
That's right.
Nice, nice. So a neighbor here. So we'll get some local listeners, but we also have international listeners as well. But well, great. Well, I'm glad to have you on the show today. And I'm going to share a little bit more on your bio for listeners to get to know you a little bit better. You are, as I mentioned, the founder of Factor One, and that's a unique advisory for service-based entrepreneurs with over 15 years of experience and a track record of helping clients double their business growth in 90 days. Josh is known for his fancy pants approach to business consulting. We'll learn about that here in a moment. He's also the host of the Do Zone podcast and runs the BYOB Lunch Club, a weekly discussion panel for entrepreneurs. Whoo, that's a lot, Josh.
I got a lot going on, man.
That is a lot. And before we started recording, we were talking about the BYOB Lunch Club, and then you also have the Do Zone podcast. So we'll kind of get into that and kind of see what the difference is there. I know we have a lot of people who are business owners and entrepreneurs who listen to the show as well. Tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe something outside of the bio, so listeners can get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, so I actually have a degree in music, and I used to
Nice,
be a high school teacher a long time ago, like 100 years ago. And it was great.
nice.
Loved it. Just got burned out real fast and decided I needed to do something else. And then, like Moses, I wandered around in the desert for 40 years and eventually kind of like found the motherland of milk and honey or whatever it was in entrepreneurship. But gosh, it was a long road.
I love it. Yeah, I noticed the cymbal in the background. My brother-in-law is a drummer, so I don't know if your neighbors will appreciate it, but I can appreciate it. Drumming is loud, right?
Yeah.
Well, good. So that's a great place to start. Let's just dive right into it. What inspired you to become a business consultant, and how did you develop your unique, what we call fancy pants approach?
The wording on that was interesting. I think somebody like mixed up the words on that. I would just say I'm a fancy pants consultant because here's the thing. When you're at a networking meeting and you're going around and people are asking, "Oh, hey, what do you do? What do you do?" And if you really want to end a conversation, just tell them you're a consultant. And they're like, "Oh, cool. Yeah, all right. Well, bye." And they're out. And so it's just kind of one of those gooey terms that like, what does that even mean? And
Right,
so
right.
I just say like, I'm going to do a little bit of self-deprecation. Hey, I'm a fancy pants consultant. Ironically, I own zero fancy pants. I should actually start buying some so that I could fit in. But the idea is this: I worked with giant consulting firms for a long time, and I've also worked independently, and I've actually worked with more than 5,000 clients. And so the reason I just say fancy pants is to take the pressure off and say something a little more interesting than me. I'm a business consultant, because nobody really cares about business consultants, right? And so as far as what works, I think this ties in very, very specifically to your podcast, because the number one problem that every entrepreneur I've ever met is facing is they don't have enough cash. And if you don't have enough cash, it creates all kinds of other problems. And so we think that we have a positioning problem. We think that we have a marketing problem, or we think that maybe there's too much competition, or the economy. We think all of these things, but they're just symptoms of a deeper problem. And that deeper problem is you don't have enough cash flow in your business. Because if you have enough cash flow and sales in your business, If you have healthy sales and cash flow, you don't actually have a problem. You have misallocation of resources. Because if you have cash, you can point some of that cash at the problem, at the perceived problem, and like pew pew pew, like annihilate it, right? Because the cash will solve the problem. And so the number one thing that I focus on all the time with any client is to solve the cash problem first. And once we solve the cash problem, everything else gets easier. Then we can go into the mindset things. Then we can go and set some clear goals. Then we can build some SOPs and systems and hire a CFO and all these other things that are really cool that we love talking about, shiny objects, AI, chat bots that'll sell for you and like squeeze your orange juice. We can do all of that cool stuff, but let's get you some cash first.
Mhm. Wow, that's a lot. So you just said a lot of really good information in a little bit of time. So let me kind of extrapolate a little bit on that. So one of the things you mentioned right away was the first thing is not enough cash for business owners, and really focusing on solving that problem first. You talked about all of the other things. We'll probably get into those, the systems and things that we can do to improve and work up the chain, right? But if you don't have enough cash, this is where you start. So I love that. That's really good. We talked about fancy pants, approach here. Talked about the 5,000 clients that you worked with in the past, and really the idea of just giving a general term. So I'm thinking about when, before the pandemic, when I was an avid networker and we were going out exchanging business cards, and you have your elevator speech and you introduce yourself. If you use a general term like consultant, it's really hard for people to know what you're talking about. So the fancy pants, that unique approach, that setting yourself apart, that is just a great actionable ideal for listeners there. Let's keep moving here. Can you
I'll give
share,
you,
or go ahead? Looks like you got,
I'll give you
yes.
one more. I'll give you one
Yeah,
more.
yeah,
Since you mentioned that, like the networking meetings, uh,
yes.
here's one thing that like if you can follow my instructions on this, it will change things for you immediately. Okay. Next time you go to a networking meeting, I want you to eliminate this question from your vocabulary. What do you do? Stop asking people what they do. And here's why. Uh, I personally do not define myself by what I do. I am me. I'm a person. I have things that I can talk about. I've traveled. I've experienced things. I speak a couple of languages. Like, I feel like I'm a pretty interesting dude. But if you're going to define me by I'm a consultant, then you're really not seeing more than 0.5% of me. And so stop asking people what they do, because people are not defined by what they do. They're defined by what they care about. And so here's a better question. Next time you're at a networking meeting, avoid the urge to say, oh, what do you do? And instead, ask them one or two questions. The first one I love, tell me something that's getting you excited right now. Tell me something you're excited about right now. Okay. What is something you're really excited about right now? And they're not going to be ready for that. They're going to be like, well, you mean like about my job? Right? That's going to be the natural reaction. Like, well, you mean like about what I do? Like, hey, it's an open-ended question. If that's what you want to talk about, cool, talk about it. But I just want to know what is exciting to you. The other variation of that is, tell me something good. Hey, man, nice to meet you. Tell me something good. People aren't used to that, right? And so you walk up to them, you say, hey, what's something you're excited about right now? And then they're like, well, you mean like about my job or career or what? Like, no, dude, it's an open-ended question. Huh. Well, I'll tell you what I'm excited about right now is, my daughter's about to graduate high school, and we just got her into this college, and she's going to study biochemistry. And man, that's just so exciting to me. Oh, wow, that's awesome. I got a daughter too. She's 16 years old. And now we're talking about stuff that matters immediately. Immediately, we're talking about stuff that matters. You're going to find a way to relate to whatever it is that they said, and just be a human being. Now all of a
Love it.
sudden you have separated yourself from everybody else who's standing there like holding the drink and the stale cookie and being like, hey, so what do you do? Because nobody cares what you do. They care what you care about.
I love it. No, you're exactly right. Anytime somebody asks me, what do you do? I feel kind of pigeonholed because I'm more than my job, right? So
Exactly.
that's fantastic. You gave us two really good questions to ask. What's something that gets you excited, that's getting you excited, and then tell me something good. Who wouldn't want to hear something good, right? We
Tell me
get
something
news
good.
every day, war in the Middle East, all that stuff. Tell me something good. I want to know something good. So
Tell me something
what a
good.
great what a great question to ask there. So let's talk about, can you share a success story where your advice has led to a client's rapid business growth?
Yeah, I got a bunch of those, but I'll give you one of my favorites.
Okay, okay.
My very first client. I am terrified because here's a guy that I'm just like shaking on the phone and like it's this many dollars, and he said yes. And I'm like, oh crap. Now what do I do? You know? Um, and so I was really worried that I was going to let him down and that I was not going to, get him results and that he was going to like sue me or something. And so I had to ask myself a question like, what can I do to make sure that this guy is really happy no matter what happens? And the way that I could answer that question is a quick win, an immediate ROI, something that moves the needle in his business. All right, cool. It had to be really easy and it had to be really obvious that I contributed to that. And so I got in there and I started kind of poking around and asking some questions and I realized I found my answer. And it was way easier than I thought it was going to be. And a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we overcomplicate stuff tremendously. And sometimes it's not that we aren't smart. We just need that new perspective from somebody else coming in and saying, hey, I don't know if you know this, but that wall that you're holding up, you can just walk around it. You don't have to keep holding it up. Like sometimes we just need somebody with a better vantage point to say, why don't you just like go this way instead? Right. And so what I realized was this guy had a call center and he had 12 sales reps, all women, by the way. He had setters and closers, and he was selling a high-end tours to Europe, and they were not using a sales script at all. But we did have recordings, and so I listened to some of the recordings, and I realized you guys are just winging it every time. And then we get to the end of the call, and it's like, hey, let me know when you're ready. We'll be happy to we'll send you some emails, some information, whatever. I'm like, oh, okay. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to write you a sales script, and then we're going to use the sales script, and that's what's going to move the needle. All right, cool. He's into it, right? And so I write the sales script, and I'm way better at writing sales scripts now than I was at that time. But it's not that hard, like there's some steps that you can take. Like I can literally scratch out on a napkin your sales script. Anybody that reaches out to me, I'll give you a sales script for free, no problem. Just tell me what you sell and I'll show you exactly how to sell it. But so I write the sales script and then I go in and it's like I'm a dude and it's a dozen women and they don't know me. I'm an outsider, and it was just like immediate backlash, like sales scripts, that's stupid. I'm not salesy. It was like a ton of resistance, a ton. But I'm like, hey, look, I wasn't ready for it, and I traveled for this. Like I flew to another state. I'm sitting there in this room, like, holy crap, what did I get myself into? And there was a ton of resistance, and they were fighting me on it the whole way. And I'm like, all right, cool. Listen, I went and pulled $100 out of the ATM. And if this story's getting too long, let me know.
No, I'm fascinated.
Okay.
Keep going.
So, so I went and pulled $100 out of the ATM, crisp $100 bill, and I walked in after lunch because all this happened before lunch, and I walked in after lunch, And I said, okay, the first person to use my script and get a deposit today gets this $100 bill. And they're like, blah, 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 and then like the smallest, meekest, mousiest girl in the corner. Her name
I
was
love
Barbara.
it.
Her name was Barbara. Sweet, sweet Barbara. She's like, I'll do it. And she goes and is like, all right, get on the phones. Let's go. So we go and we get on the phones. Barbara starts reading my script word for word. And she's going and she's going and she's going. Barbara's going to get a deposit, and she's just following the process. She just did what I told her to do. And then at the end, she said, well, okay, so we're going to put this plan together for you. All we ask is a $100 deposit. It's fully refundable so that we can go and work on this. And then we're going to set up a follow-up call to go over the plan with you in a couple of days when we have everything together. Is that okay? And then they said, yeah, sure, let's do it. She gets the credit card number. She hangs up the phone, and it's like high fives. Yeah,
High fives all
Barbara,
around.
and I handed her the $100, and then everybody else was like, huh, it works. I don't like that guy, but it works. And so they followed the sales script, and that month doubled their sales. They made twice as much
Nice.
money that month than they did the month before. And then we kept working on it, and eventually they became an 8-figure company. They crossed $12 million this year.
Wow.
And I think they were like at 3 or 4 or something when we started. And so they crossed $12 million by making one tiny change that was simple. It wasn't like some weird back alley, consulting voodoo. It was just
right.
somebody who had the perspective to be able to say, well, hey, why don't you guys just say the words that are going to get people to pay you money? It's not that you don't know those words. It's just that maybe you're not following a process that consistently executes. And that was the one thing they needed to do in order to blast ahead and be an 8-figure company. And now they're crushing it. And also, one last thing, in addition to selling way more tours, they're now charging almost 3 times as much as they did at that point because of the confidence they've gained by just following the process. Look, you either use us or you don't.
I love
Not
that. I
ready?
love that.
Yeah.
And that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you see that it works, that gives you the confidence to get some momentum going and to keep it going. And I love how you mentioned you started with winging it, right? Winging it usually is a bad idea, right? Coming from the music background, we think of improvisation, improvisational jazz, something like that, right? But those guys have the fundamentals down. By the time you're ready to do the improvisation, you've already done the scripts, you've done the habits that you need to do. So that's a fantastic story to share. We saw the growth, the monumental growth with this company from just doing some of these things here. We're getting towards the end of the half hour. We got about 8 minutes left, so I've got to kind of pick and choose what I want to ask here. Here's one. How do you incorporate human psychology and behavior into your business strategies?
As human beings, we all operate on 4 primary hormones and chemical responses: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. And they all do different things. And so the ones that we use the most, though, in a business setting are dopamine and serotonin. So just a quick rundown. I won't get too sciencey on this. Dopamine is the reward chemical. Okay, when somebody thumbs up our post on Facebook, we get a rush of dopamine. Yay, I win. Right? Serotonin is the community chemical. It is something that happens when we are part of a group, when we go and we see our family, when we join a mastermind. that feeling that we get. That's serotonin. Oxytocin is about intimacy and relationships, kind of like with your husband or wife or something like that. And then endorphins are basically just kind of like a painkiller that that kind of distract you from, if like your leg gets cut off or something, then you get a rush of endorphins so that you're not thinking about your leg getting cut off and how much it hurts. And so kind of in that order, right? And the reason that those chemicals exist is because they're essential to our survival. Okay. Dopamine comes out and rewards us when we exercise, when we do behaviors that are helping us survive. Like we get a rush of dopamine when we eat high carb, high fat foods, because back in the day, we're running around on the prairie. We never knew when we were going to eat again. And so our brain had to reward us whenever we were eating stuff that like packed the fat on just in case of famine. Okay. Serotonin, out in the prairie, there's saber-toothed tigers everywhere. You're much safer in packs than out there by yourself. And so you get a rush of serotonin when you go and you get around other people. Now, and I could talk about that for hours. But the point of it is, once you understand that's how you're wired as a human being, now you can start paying attention to the decisions that you're making and realizing that most of the decisions you're making are in order to get that next hit of dopamine or get that next hit of serotonin. And if you have relationship stuff going on, you're looking for that next hit of oxytocin, right? And we could go deeper into that, but I want to maximize the opportunities to create dopamine and serotonin in somebody else's life, because that's going to make them gravitate towards me and my solutions, right? I'm not manipulating anybody. I'm just giving you what you want. My friend Joshua Lee, he calls himself the dopamine dealer of LinkedIn. and
Nice.
And this is exactly what he does. He wants to make people feel good, and that's how he grows his business, right? And so you can incorporate that in whatever it is that you do or sell, by understanding what is the chemical response that what you say provides to somebody else. And then I know we're short on time. I want you to understand the flip side of that is cortisol. Cortisol is the stress hormone. Cortisol shoots into your body and makes you like one track mind. Whenever you're standing somewhere and you turn around and there's a bear, your body is full of adrenaline and cortisol. And what it's doing is it's blocking out everything else so that all you're thinking about is survival. Because you're not going to, if you see a bear, you're not worried about what you're eating tonight. You're not worried about who's gossiping about you or if somebody's going to like your presentation tomorrow. You're only worried about getting away from the bear, because cortisol blocks every other thought out. Understand that as well, because when you trigger cortisol in your prospect's mind, they are no longer thinking about the logic or emotional rewards they get from buying your product. They're just thinking about getting away from you, right? So we have to understand that's how human beings are. You're not going to change that. Embrace it and make sure that you're fitting into that and you're maximizing reward and you're minimizing those cortisol responses.
I love it. I love it. So embrace that. Know that we are a chemical run machine, right? And we've got those 4 chemicals, and then we've even got the cortisol one that works. That's the negative one, right? That gives us stress and feeds into all that anxiety. Fantastic. We are right here towards the end of the show. I've got one more question for you. What are your future plans with the Do Zone podcast? You are here in Texas, so I know we're going to get some of the same listeners. And how do you see the Do Zone podcast evolving?
It already has kind of evolved. I created this a couple of years ago. I'm almost at 200 episodes now. And the Do Zone was an idea about keeping entrepreneurs in this kind of zone of maximum productivity. And that evolved into multiple things. One of them was my company, Factor One, which is very much focused on you are Factor One for your own success. And you have to do the things, you have to do the work, you have to do productive work that's going to actually get the results, and you can't just keep spinning your wheels. The other thing it evolved into is I put together a personality profile test called the Flow State DNA. And that is designed for entrepreneurs to help you understand your kind of entrepreneurial hardwiring for how you operate against time, against your environment, other people, and your execution style. And so that you can get that information in front of you and say, oh, okay, now that I know how I operate, I can make little tweaks and changes in my environment so that I can maximize my productivity and hit that flow state and really get more done. And so I just recently finished that and launched that. But that's where the Do Zone kind of started as this thing, and it's turned into this whole other giant. But yeah, the Flow State
Wow.
DNA, you can go to flowstatedna.com. It's a free test, takes 2 minutes. You can get your results real quick.
Perfect. I love it. Flow state. We've had Stephen Kotler on the show before. And so when I think flow state, I think of the rise of the Superman. It sounds like it's in the same vein there. So I will point listeners to that. You gave us the website address. We're bumping right here towards the end of the show. Is there anything that I forgot to ask that you'd like to share with listeners today?
You know, go out there and be intentional about whatever it is that you're doing. If you're an entrepreneur and you're struggling right now, keep this in mind. If you feel like, gosh, I wish I could go and do this, I wish I could do that, but I'm just so busy. I'm just so slammed right now. I just don't have time to go and focus on this. Understand, if you are not where you want to be right now and you're feeling busy, you're doing the wrong things. Stop doing those things. Start doing the things that are going to get you the results that you want.
What a good message to leave with today. I know everybody feels like the crushing weight of their schedule. So that is such a good, positive thing to leave with today. Josh, for listeners who want to find out more, where can they go to find you?
Yep, you got it. I'm on social media at JT Literally. And if you are an entrepreneur and something that I said resonated with you and you're like, hey, man, I need some help with this, I'd love to talk to you. Go watch a 6-minute video on a website called iamfactor1.com. That's iamfactor1.com. There's a 6-minute video. If that video resonates with you, let's have a conversation and we'll see if there's something that we can do together. I'm pretty straight up.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Josh, so much. Have a good rest of the day there. Thanks for being on the show.